The bruises on her grandfather's arms made Emma's hands shake so violently she nearly dropped her phone. Purple and yellow marks, perfectly shaped like fingerprints, circled his thin wrists like brutal bracelets. Robert Dutch Henderson, 90 years old and decorated World War II veteran, sat in his wheelchair staring out the window of his room at Sunset Meadows Nursing Home, seemingly unaware that his granddaughter was documenting evidence of what she'd feared for weeks. Someone was hurting him. Emma Henderson was 28 years old, a high school art teacher with a steady hand and an artist's eye for detail. But right now, her hands trembled as she took photo after photo, zooming in on bruises that shouldn't exist, on skin so thin and fragile it tore if you looked at it wrong. These weren't accidents, these were grip marks. Someone had grabbed her grandfather hard enough to leave impressions. "Grandpa," she whispered, kneeling beside his wheelchair. "How did this happen? Who did this to you?" Dutch turned slowly, his roomy blue eyes taking a moment to focus. Those eyes had once been sharp enough to spot German positions from 500 yards away on the beaches of Normandy. Now they struggled to recognize his own granddaughter some days, but when he finally saw her, his weathered face cracked into a smile. "Emmy girl," he said, using the nickname he'd given her when she was 3. "When did you get here?" "Just now, Grandpa." She forced her voice to stay calm, gentle. "Your arms. Do they hurt?" He looked down at his wrists as if seeing them for the first time. A flicker of something, fear maybe, or shame crossed his face. Then it was gone, replaced by that same confused smile. "Must have bumped into something," he said quietly. "You know me. Clumsy old fool." But Dutch Henderson had never been clumsy. This was a man who'd received the Purple Heart after taking shrapnel at Omaha Beach and still managed to pull 2 wounded men to safety. A man who'd worked as a carpenter for 47 years after the war, building houses with hands that never shook until Parkinson's took that away from him 3 years ago. A man who'd taught Emma to build a birdhouse when she was 7, his patience endless as she hammered crooked nails. Emma had moved him into Sunset Meadows 8 months ago. The decision had destroyed her. Dutch had lived independently until a fall in his bathroom left him with a broken hip. After surgery, it became clear he couldn't manage alone anymore. Emma had researched for weeks, visited a dozen facilities, and chosen Sunset Meadows because of their spotless reviews and promises of dignity-focused care for veterans. For the first month, everything seemed fine. Dutch seemed content, even happy. He liked the recreational therapist, enjoyed the garden, made friends with other residents. Emma visited 3 times a week, bringing his favorite butterscotch candies and reading him chapters from Louis L'Amour westerns. Then, small things started changing. Dutch seemed more withdrawn. Staff members who'd been friendly became short with her, rushing her out at the end of visiting hours. Her grandfather's clothes came back from laundry stained or torn. His room, which he always left tidy, was increasingly messy, his belongings shoved carelessly into drawers. When she asked questions, the staff smiled tight professional smiles and assured her everything was fine. Her grandfather was just adjusting, they said. Having some difficult days, they said. It was normal for dementia patients to become agitated, they said. But Dutch didn't have dementia. He had Parkinson's, arthritis, and hearing loss. His mind was still sharp more often than not. And when Emma asked him directly if everything was okay, she saw that same flicker of fear before he changed the subject. 2 weeks ago, she'd arrived to find him in soiled clothes, sitting in his wheelchair in the hallway. When she demanded to know why no one had changed him, a nursing assistant named Bridget rolled her eyes and said they were short-staffed, as if that explained leaving a 90-year-old veteran in his own waste. 1 week ago, Dutch had a bruise on his cheek. Staff claimed he'd bumped the bed rail during a transfer. The bruise was shaped like knuckles. 3 days ago, Emma spoke with the nursing home administrator, Laura Hastings, a 40-something woman with calculating eyes and a smile that never reached them. Emma expressed her concerns about her grandfather's declining condition and the bruises. Laura had listened with feigned sympathy, then suggested perhaps Emma was being overprotective, that elderly patients bruised easily, that the staff at Sunset Meadows were highly trained professionals. The meeting ended with a barely veiled threat about how families who made unfounded accusations sometimes found their loved ones had to be transferred to less desirable facilities due to behavioral issues. Emma had left furious and terrified. That's when she'd ordered the camera. It arrived yesterday, a small wireless camera disguised as a digital clock purchased from a website that specialized in elder care monitoring. Emma had read forums where other families described similar situations, how hidden cameras revealed truths that staff would never admit. She'd installed it this morning, positioning it on Dutch's bedside table with a clear view of his bed and most of the room. She'd told her grandfather it was a new clock so he could see the time better. He'd thanked her and gone back to watching birds at the feeder outside his window. Now, 12 hours later, Emma sat in her apartment staring at her laptop screen. The camera had already captured 6 hours of footage. She'd started watching at 8 p.m., expecting maybe to see some neglect, perhaps staff being short or impatient. What she saw instead made her stomach turn to ice. The first incident occurred at 2:15 p.m. A nursing assistant, Emma didn't recognize, a heavy-set woman with bleached blonde hair, came in to give Dutch his afternoon medications. Instead of helping him take the pills with water, she simply dropped them on his tray and walked out. Dutch's hands shook too badly to pick up the small pills. He tried for several minutes, his fingers fumbling, before giving up. The medication sat untaken until the woman returned an hour later, saw the pills still there, and threw them in the trash with an annoyed huff. At 4:30 p.m., 2 staff members came to transfer Dutch from his wheelchair to bed for a nap. Emma recognized one, Bridget, the nursing assistant who'd been dismissive before. The other was a younger man, maybe 25, with multiple tattoos visible on his arms. They moved Dutch roughly, jerking him from the chair without warning. Dutch cried out, his voice cracking with pain as they twisted his arm, getting him into position. The young man mimicked his cry, laughing. "Oh, quit being dramatic, old man," Bridget said, her voice dripping with contempt. "You want something to really cry about?" Dutch said something Emma couldn't hear on the recording. The young man leaned close to Dutch's face. "What was that? You were a big, tough soldier?" He laughed again. "You're not so tough now, are you? You're just a pathetic old man who can't even wipe his own ass." Emma's vision blurred with tears, but she kept watching. At 6 p.m., during what should have been dinner service, Bridget returned alone. She placed a tray on Dutch's table, but positioned it just far enough away that he couldn't reach it with his limited mobility. Dutch asked for help, his voice polite, always polite. "Help yourself," Bridget said, checking her phone. "I'm not your waitress." "Please," Dutch said. "I can't reach it." "Then I guess you're not that hungry." She walked out. Dutch sat staring at his dinner for 20 minutes before another staff member, an older woman who seemed kind, came in and moved the tray closer, apologizing. But by then, the food was cold, and Dutch had lost his appetite. The worst came at 7:45 p.m., just before shift change. Bridget and the tattooed man returned to prepare Dutch for bed. This time, when they transferred him, they were even rougher. The man grabbed Dutch's wrist, the same wrist that now bore those fingerprint bruises, and squeezed while yanking him upward. Dutch gasped in pain. "Hurts, doesn't it?" the man said, squeezing harder. "Maybe if you weren't such a demanding old bastard, we'd be nicer." "I didn't demand anything," Dutch said, his voice shaking. "I just asked for water." "You're always asking for something," Bridget snapped. She pulled back Dutch's blanket so hard it snapped like a whip. "Water, help, medication, blah, blah, blah. You know how annoying you are?" They positioned him carelessly in bed, not bothering to make sure he was comfortable or safe. As they turned to leave, the tattooed man looked back and saluted mockingly. "Thank you for your service," he said in a sing-song voice, and both of them laughed as they walked out, leaving Dutch lying in the dark, silent tears running down his weathered cheeks. Emma stopped the video. She sat in her apartment, hands covering her mouth, sobs shaking her entire body. They were torturing him. These people, trusted to care for vulnerable elderly patients, were systematically abusing her grandfather for their own amusement. She grabbed her phone and called the nursing home immediately. It was 8:30 p.m., and she demanded to speak with whoever was in charge. The night supervisor, a man named Gerald, listened to her furious explanation with bureaucratic calm. "Ms. Henderson, these are serious allegations. I'll need to review this with administration in the morning." "In the morning? Are you kidding me?" I have video evidence of staff abusing my grandfather. I want them removed from his care immediately. I understand you're upset, but I can't take disciplinary action based on a phone call. Bring the footage to Administrator Hastings tomorrow and we'll review it through proper channels. Proper channels? My grandfather's being hurt right now, tonight. What if they go back in his room? I assure you, our night staff is different from day staff. Your grandfather is perfectly safe. But he wasn't safe. Emma knew it. She called the police next. The dispatcher was sympathetic, but ultimately unhelpful. She'd need to file a report in person, they said. Elder abuse investigations took time, they said. If she had video evidence, she should bring it to the detective division in the morning, they said. But what about tonight? Emma asked desperately. Ma'am, if you believe your grandfather is in immediate danger, you can go pick him up from the facility. Emma had thought of that. But it was 9 p.m. Dutch would be confused and frightened by a sudden middle-of-the-night move, and she'd need medical equipment she didn't have. She'd need to arrange home care, which took time and money she didn't have readily available. The system was designed to keep him exactly where he was. She didn't sleep that night. At 6 a.m., she was parked outside Sunset Meadows, waiting for visiting hours to start at 8. When the doors finally opened, she went straight to Laura Hastings' office. The administrator kept her waiting 45 minutes. When Emma was finally admitted, she didn't waste time. She opened her laptop and played the footage. Laura watched with an expression that barely changed. When the video ended, she folded her hands on her desk. "This is very concerning," she said, her tone suggesting it was anything but. "However, I need to inform you that California is a two-party consent state. Recording someone without their knowledge is illegal. This footage cannot be used." Emma stared at her in disbelief. "Are you serious? You're threatening me with legal action instead of addressing the abuse?" "I'm not threatening anything. I'm simply stating facts. The staff members in this video could sue you for violation of their privacy rights." Laura's smile was reptilian. "Furthermore, installing surveillance equipment in a private facility without permission violates our resident agreement. I could have you banned from visiting. My grandfather is being abused by your staff. Your grandfather is a 90-year-old man with declining health. Our staff works very hard under difficult circumstances. Yes, some interactions could have been more gentle, but I see no evidence of actual abuse. What I see is a family member who doesn't understand the realities of elder care making accusations that could destroy good people's careers." Emma's hands clenched into fists. "Those good people called my grandfather pathetic. They hurt him deliberately. They withheld his medication. I'll speak with the staff members involved. We'll address any communication issues and provide additional training on gentle care techniques." Laura stood, signaling the meeting was over. "But Ms. Henderson, I strongly suggest you remove that camera and refrain from making these accusations outside this office. Defamation is a serious legal matter." Emma left the office shaking with rage and desperation. She'd been threatened, dismissed, and stonewalled. The police said they needed more evidence. The nursing home was covering it up. She felt utterly powerless. That evening, sitting in her apartment with the video file open on her computer, Emma made a decision. If the official channels wouldn't help her grandfather, maybe the public would. She created a YouTube account. She edited the worst segments of the footage together into a 4-minute video, blurring the faces of other residents for their privacy, but leaving the abusive staff members clearly visible. She titled it, "Help My Grandfather, 90-year-old White Hu, veteran abused in nursing home." In the description, she wrote, "This is my grandfather, Robert Dutch Henderson. He's 90 years old. He stormed Omaha Beach on D-Day. He earned the Purple Heart. He built houses for 47 years. He taught me kindness, and now he's being abused in the place that promised to care for him. I've reported this to the facility and police, and nothing has been done. I'm sharing this because I don't know what else to do. If anyone knows how to help, please. He deserves better than this." She added tags: elder abuse, veteran, nursing home, justice, help. She posted it at 9:47 p.m. on a Tuesday night. Then she sat back and prayed someone, anyone, would care enough to help. By midnight, the video had 300 views. By 3 a.m., 15,000. By dawn, it had gone viral. Emma woke to her phone vibrating so violently it fell off her nightstand. She grabbed it groggily, squinting at the screen. 6:23 a.m. The notification count made her think her phone was broken. 2,417 notifications. Her email inbox showed 983 unread messages. Her YouTube video, posted just 8 hours ago, had 3.2 million views. She sat up so fast her head spun. 3 million. The number didn't seem real. She opened the video with shaking hands and watched the view counter tick upward in real time. 3,041. 3,068. 3,093. Every few seconds, hundreds more people were watching her grandfather being abused. The comment section had exploded into thousands of messages. Emma scrolled through them, tears streaming down her face. "I'm a Navy vet, and this makes me sick. That man stormed Normandy, and this is how we treat him? My grandmother died in a place like this. I didn't know until it was too late. Thank you for being brave enough to expose this. I'm a lawyer in California. I'll represent you pro bono. DM me. This is absolutely disgusting. Those staff members should be in prison. Shared to every veteran group I'm in. This needs to go national." That's Robert Henderson. I served with his son in Desert Storm. Dutch is a goddamn American hero. But mixed with the support were uglier comments. People questioning why she'd put her grandfather in a home at all. People suggesting the video was staged. People defending the staff, saying families didn't understand how difficult elder care was. Emma tried not to read those, but they burned into her mind anyway. Her phone rang. An unknown California number. She answered hesitantly. "Emma Henderson? This is Stephanie Chen from Channel 7 News. We'd like to interview you about your grandfather's situation. Would you be available this morning?" Before Emma could answer, another call beeped through. Then another. By 7 a.m., she'd received interview requests from 11 different news outlets, including 2 national networks. Local stations, cable news, even international media were calling. The story had transcended social media and entered the mainstream news cycle. At 7:45 a.m., her phone rang again. This time it was a number she recognized. Sunset Meadows Nursing Home. "Ms. Henderson, this is Laura Hastings." The administrator's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. "I don't know what you think you're accomplishing with this stunt, but you've just opened yourself up to massive legal liability. That video violates privacy laws, defames our staff, and breaches your residency agreement. Our attorneys will be contacting you." "Your staff abused my grandfather," Emma said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "The whole world just saw the proof. The world saw a highly edited video taken out of context. We have 37 families in this facility, and you've just terrified all of them with false accusations. You've damaged our reputation and endangered our ability to operate. I hope you have a good lawyer, Ms. Henderson, because you're going to need one." Laura hung up. Emma sat, staring at her phone, fear creeping through her initial rush of vindication. Could they really sue her? Could she go to jail for recording? She'd been so focused on exposing the abuse that she hadn't fully considered the legal consequences. Or another call came through immediately. Different number, different area code. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Ms. Henderson, my name is Marcus Steele. I'm president of the Rolling Thunder Motorcycle Club, veteran advocacy organization. I just watched your video." The man's voice was deep, gravelly, carrying weight. "I need to know, is your grandfather still in that facility?" "Yes, he is. I'm planning to move him today, but I need to arrange medical equipment and home care, and it's all happening so fast." "Don't move him yet," Marcus said. "We're coming to you." 200 miles north, in a warehouse workshop that smelled of motor oil and leather, Marcus Ironside Steele stood before a laptop, watching Emma's video for the 4th time. Each viewing made his blood boil hotter. Marcus was 62 years old, built like a fire hydrant, with a gray beard that hung to his chest and arms covered in tattoos chronicling 4 decades of military service and motorcycle brotherhood. His left leg, from the knee down, was titanium and carbon fiber. He'd lost the original in Vietnam in 1971, stepping on a mine while pulling a wounded Marine to safety. The injury had earned him a medical discharge, a Purple Heart, and a lifetime of phantom pains that made sleep difficult. It had also given him his road name, Ironside. partly for the prosthetic, partly for his personality. He'd founded the Rolling Thunder Motorcycle Club 32 years ago, originally as a small group of Vietnam vets who rode together and advocated for POW MIA awareness. Over the decades, it had grown into a nationwide organization with chapters in 43 states and over 12,000 members. Their mission had expanded too, supporting veterans, exposing VA failures, and protecting elderly vets from exactly the kind of abuse he was watching on screen. But this wasn't just any veteran to Marcus. He recognized that face. 5 years ago, Rolling Thunder had organized a massive reunion ride in Southern California, bringing together World War II, Korea, and Vietnam veterans for a weekend of stories and brotherhood. Marcus had spent an evening sitting beside a frail but sharp-minded man who'd introduced himself as Dutch Henderson. Dutch had told stories that made the younger vets sit in awestruck silence. Stories about landing at Omaha Beach in the fifth wave, watching boys he'd trained with get cut down before they reached the sand. About crawling through hedgerows in France, never knowing if the next bush hit a German machine gun nest. About liberating a concentration camp and seeing horrors that still woke him up 50 years later. But Dutch hadn't told these stories with bravado. He'd told them quietly, with humility, always deflecting praise. "I wasn't special," he'd said. "Just did what needed doing. The real heroes didn't come home." Marcus remembered shaking Dutch's weathered hand, looking into those clear blue eyes and thinking, this is what we're fighting for. So men like this can live out their final years with dignity. Now that same man was being tortured by people who should have been honored to care for him. Marcus's personal rage went deeper than just knowing Dutch. His own father, a Korean War veteran, had died 7 years ago in a nursing home. The official cause was pneumonia, but Marcus knew the truth. His father had been neglected, left in soiled clothes, denied basic dignity. By the time Marcus realized how bad it was, his father was too weak to survive a transfer to better care. Marcus had sworn then that he'd never let another veteran suffer that way. He'd made protecting elderly vets Rolling Thunder's primary mission, and now, watching Dutch being mocked and hurt, he felt that old familiar fury ignite. He picked up his phone and sent a mass text to every chapter president in the organization. Emergency meeting. Video call in 1 hour. This is Priority Alpha. An hour later, 23 chapter presidents filled Marcus's laptop screen in a video conference. Faces ranged from late 30s to early 70s, men and women from every branch of service, united by brotherhood and purpose. Marcus played Emma's video without preamble. The reaction was immediate and volcanic, cursing, shouting, fists slamming tables. When the video ended, Marcus let the anger flow for a moment before raising his hand for silence. "That's Dutch Henderson. Some of you met him at the California reunion 5 years back. World War II, D-Day survivor, Purple Heart, 90 years old, and he's being abused in a nursing home in Riverside, California, while the administration covers it up." "Where are the police?" someone asked. According to his granddaughter, they say there's not enough evidence for immediate action. The nursing home is threatening her with lawsuits for recording. She's trying to move him, but it takes time to arrange proper care. Marcus leaned closer to the camera. "Brothers and sisters, we have an opportunity here. This video is going viral. The whole country is watching. We can make a statement that will echo." "What are you proposing?" asked Christina Hawk Morales, president of the Arizona chapter and a Gulf War veteran. "I'm proposing we ride. Every chapter that can mobilize, we converge on Sunset Meadows Nursing Home. We set up a peaceful demonstration. We make it clear that America's veterans are not alone, that we protect our own, and that elder abuse will not be tolerated." "How many bikes are we talking?" asked James Preacher Williams from the Nevada chapter. Marcus pulled up a spreadsheet he'd already started. "If we mobilize California, Arizona, Nevada, Oregon, and Washington chapters, plus any individual riders who want to join from other states, I'm estimating between 500 and 800 motorcycles." The video chat erupted again, but this time with excitement and determination. "California's in," said the San Diego president. "We can have 100 bikes rolling by tomorrow morning. Arizona's in, 65 confirmed, probably more. Nevada's in, 40 bikes minimum. Oregon's in, we'll ride through the night if we have to. Down the line it went, chapter after chapter, committing riders, organizing logistics, coordinating routes. Marcus felt something swelling in his chest, pride maybe, or justice preparing to be served. This stays peaceful, Marcus emphasized. We're not vigilantes, we're citizens exercising our right to peaceful assembly. We coordinate with local police, we stay on public property, we document everything. The last thing we want is to give that nursing home ammunition to paint us as the bad guys. What about Dutch? Someone asked. Is he safe tonight? I'm putting that in motion right now, Marcus said. We've got members in the Riverside area who can do rotating watch outside the facility. Nothing illegal, just visible presence. Let the staff know they're being observed. After the video call ended, Marcus made several more calls. To the Riverside chapter president, who immediately mobilized 15 local riders to begin a visible patrol outside Sunset Meadows. To a sympathetic reporter he knew at the Los Angeles Times, offering an exclusive on the Rolling Thunder response. To a veterans' rights attorney in San Diego, asking for legal advice on how to navigate the demonstration without giving the nursing home grounds for restraining orders. Then he called Emma. Ms. Henderson, Marcus Steele again. I just got off a video conference with 23 chapter presidents from across 5 states. By tomorrow afternoon, we're going to have approximately 700 to 800 motorcycles converging on Riverside to demonstrate outside Sunset Meadows. There was a long silence on the line. Then Emma's voice, small and disbelieving. 700 motorcycles? Give or take. We're veterans, Ms. Henderson. Marines, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard. When one of our own is hurting, we show up. Dutch served with honor. Now it's our turn to serve him. I don't know what to say. I never expected anything like this. You exposed an injustice. We're responding to it. That's how this works. Marcus paused. But I need to warn you, this is going to get bigger before it gets better. Media coverage will intensify. The nursing home will push back hard. Are you prepared for that? I don't have a choice, Emma said. My grandfather's still in there. If this is what it takes to protect him and stop this from happening to other people's grandparents, then yes, I'm prepared. Good. We ride at dawn tomorrow. I'll see you there. While Marcus coordinated the veteran response, the mainstream media machine was accelerating. By noon, Emma's video had been featured on every major news network. Cable news anchors led with it. Daytime talk shows interrupted regular programming. The hashtag Justice for Dutch was trending #1 nationwide. Reporters descended on Riverside. News vans lined the street outside Sunset Meadows. Cameras pointed at the bland administrative building like cannons. Nursing home staff arrived for their shifts to find microphones thrust in their faces, questions shouted about abuse and cover-ups. Laura Hastings held a hastily arranged press conference at 2 p.m., standing outside the facility with her lawyer beside her. She read from a prepared statement, her voice professional, but her eyes betraying panic. Sunset Meadows Nursing Home has provided quality care to the elderly community for 18 years. The video circulating online represents a gross mischaracterization of a brief interaction taken completely out of context. Our staff works tirelessly under difficult circumstances to provide compassionate care to some of society's most vulnerable individuals. We are conducting an internal investigation and will take appropriate action if any policies were violated. However, we stand behind our employees and condemn the character assassination they're currently enduring based on heavily edited footage. Reporters erupted with questions. Are the staff members in the video still working with patients? Have you filed a police report about the alleged illegal recording? Multiple families are now coming forward with similar complaints. How do you respond? Laura ignored the questions and retreated inside, but the damage control was failing spectacularly. By mid-afternoon, 3 more families had posted their own videos and testimonies online, describing similar neglect and abuse at Sunset Meadows. Former employees began coming forward anonymously, confirming that mistreatment was common and management actively discouraged reporting. The California Department of Social Services announced they were launching an immediate investigation. The local district attorney's office released a statement promising to review all evidence for potential criminal charges. Inside the facility, staff members were in chaos. Bridget, the nursing assistant featured prominently in Emma's video, called in sick and then deactivated all her social media accounts after receiving hundreds of threatening messages. The tattooed orderly, whose name was revealed as Kyle Brennan, similarly went into hiding. Both had been identified by internet sleuths within hours of the video going viral, their full names, addresses, and employment histories posted online. Emma received an email at 4 p.m. from a law firm representing Sunset Meadows, threatening litigation for defamation, invasion of privacy, and breach of contract. The email demanded she remove the video immediately and issue a public apology or face legal action seeking damages exceeding $500,000. She stared at the number, her hands going numb. $500,000. She was a teacher. She had $42,000 in student loans and $1,700 in her checking account. A lawsuit like that would destroy her financially for life. She was reading the email for the third time, panic rising in her throat when her phone rang. Another unknown number. Ms. Henderson, my name is David Chen. I'm an attorney specializing in elder law and whistleblower protection. I saw your video and the subsequent threat from Sunset Meadows' legal team. I'd like to represent you pro bono. Emma couldn't speak for a moment. Pro bono? For free? Completely free. What you did took courage. You exposed systemic abuse and you're being punished for it. That's exactly the kind of case I became a lawyer to fight. David's voice was warm, confident. I've already drafted a response to their threat. Short version, they have no case. California law protects whistleblowers who expose elder abuse. You acted in good faith to protect your grandfather. Any judge will see that. But they said I violated privacy laws by recording without consent. That argument won't hold up. California allows recording when there's a reasonable suspicion of abuse or neglect of an elder or dependent adult. Your grandfather's prior bruises gave you that reasonable suspicion. Plus, you're his family member acting in his best interest. We're on solid legal ground. For the first time in days, Emma felt like she could breathe. Thank you. I don't know how to thank you. Help me build the case. I need every piece of documentation you have. Medical records, photographs of injuries, emails with the facility, everything. We're not just defending against their lawsuit. We're going on offense. Civil suit for negligence, elder abuse, and emotional distress. We're going to make sure Sunset Meadows never does this to another family. That evening, as the sun set over Riverside, 15 motorcycles circled the block around Sunset Meadows in a slow, steady patrol. The riders didn't stop, didn't threaten, didn't even look at the building. They just rode, visible and constant, a rolling reminder that someone was watching now. Inside his room, Dutch Henderson sat by his window, watching the motorcycles pass. Something in the rumble of their engines stirred a memory, distant and warm, the sound of freedom, the sound of brothers. Emma sat beside him, holding his hand. "Big day tomorrow, Grandpa," she said softly. "A lot of people are coming to see you, veterans like you. They're coming because they care, because you matter." Dutch turned to her, and for a moment his eyes were perfectly clear. "I'm not special, Emmy girl. Just did what needed doing." Emma squeezed his hand, tears streaming down her face. "You're wrong, Grandpa. You're the most special person I know. And tomorrow, the whole world is going to see it." Outside, the motorcycles kept circling. Inside, staff members whispered nervously, knowing the storm was coming. And 200 miles away, 750 riders prepared their bikes for a dawn departure. The viral storm had broken. Now came the reckoning. The rumble began at 5:47 a.m., rolling across the desert like distant thunder that refused to fade. Marcus Steele had departed Sacramento at midnight with 43 riders, their headlights cutting through darkness as they rode south through the heart of California. They'd stopped once for gas, once for coffee, and otherwise maintained a steady 70 miles per hour, eating up highway like a mechanical river flowing toward justice. Now, as dawn broke pink and gold over Riverside, Marcus led his chapter down the exit ramp toward Sunset Meadows nursing home. Behind him stretched a line of motorcycles that seemed endless, choppers with high handlebars and stretched frames. touring bikes loaded with saddlebags and American flags, cruisers gleaming chrome in the early light, sport bikes that looked out of place until you saw the military patches on their riders' vests. They weren't alone. Converging from 12 different directions, motorcycle clubs and independent riders had been traveling through the night. From Arizona came 68 bikes led by Christina Hawk Morales, her silver hair braided down her back, the scars on her arms from a Humvee explosion in Kuwait still visible. From Nevada rode 51 motorcycles, many piloted by older veterans who'd strapped portable oxygen tanks to their bikes because they'd be damned if breathing problems would keep them from this ride. Oregon sent 37 riders who'd left at 2 a.m. to make the 10-hour journey. Washington sent 29. Even riders from as far as Texas, Colorado, and Montana had made the pilgrimage, solo travelers who'd seen the video and known they had to be present. By 6:15 a.m., the parking lot of a closed shopping center 2 blocks from Sunset Meadows had become a staging area for 750 motorcycles. The sound was overwhelming, a symphony of engines that rattled windows and set off car alarms for blocks in every direction. The vibration could be felt through the ground like a sustained earthquake. Marcus cut his engine and climbed off his bike, his prosthetic legs stiff after the long ride. Around him, riders were dismounting, stretching, greeting brothers and sisters they hadn't seen in months or years. But despite the reunion atmosphere, the mood was deadly serious. These weren't young rebels looking for trouble. The average age hovered around 55. There were grandmothers and grandfathers, people who'd taken vacation days from teaching jobs and nursing positions and construction sites. There were men with gray beards that hung to their chests, and women with tattoos commemorating lost loved ones. There were riders in wheelchairs with modified hand controls on their bikes, amputees with prosthetics, veterans with service dogs wearing their own small vests with patches. Marcus spotted patches from every branch of military service: Marines, Army, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard. He saw Vietnam patches, Desert Storm patches, Iraq and Afghanistan patches. He saw Purple Hearts commemorated in purple threading, Bronze Stars in bronze, Silver Stars in silver. Some vests carried darker patches, POW-MIA, Gold Star Family, KIA Memorial. The Gold Star families had arrived in force. Parents who'd lost children in combat, spouses who'd buried husbands and wives, siblings who'd said goodbye to brothers and sisters. They rode to honor their fallen and to protect those who'd made it home, only to face a different kind of enemy. A woman in her 70s approached Marcus, walking with a cane but wearing a vest covered in Marine Corps patches. "My son died in Fallujah in 2004, she said quietly. He was 22. The last thing he said to me before he deployed was, 'Take care of the old-timers, Mom. They took care of us. I'm here for him.'" Marcus shook her hand gently. He'd be proud. The media presence was staggering. At least 30 news vans lined the streets, satellite dishes extended toward the sky. Reporters were setting up live shot positions, cameramen checking angles. Helicopters circled overhead, their cameras capturing the massive gathering from above. This wasn't just local news anymore. This was national, international. The story had transcended one abused veteran and become a symbol of how society treated its elderly and its heroes. At 6:30 a.m., Marcus gathered the chapter presidents and ride organizers in a tight circle. He'd coordinated with the Riverside Police Department the night before, and now 2 officers approached the group. The lead officer, a captain named Rodriguez, looked stressed but respectful. "Mr. Steele, we appreciate you reaching out ahead of time. This is going to be the biggest demonstration Riverside has seen in decades. I need your assurance this stays peaceful." "You have my word, Captain. We're here to stand for a veteran who can't stand for himself. Nothing more, nothing less." Marcus pulled out a map marked with highlighter. "We'll maintain position on public property only. Sidewalks, street parking, the park across from the facility. No one blocks the entrance or prevents staff from entering. No one touches facility property. We're here to witness and document, not to threaten." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "I've watched the video. I'm a vet myself. Army, Iraq. What happened to that man makes me sick. Officially, I have to maintain order. Unofficially, I hope you scare the hell out of anyone who'd hurt an elderly veteran." "We intend to, Captain." By 7 a.m., the migration began. 750 motorcycles rolled slowly down the residential streets toward Sunset Meadows, moving at walking pace, engines throttled low but still creating a sound that swallowed everything else. Residents came out onto porches and lawns, some filming, some saluting, some just staring in awe at the sheer scale of what was passing through their quiet neighborhood. The bikes began arranging themselves in a perimeter around the nursing home with military precision. This wasn't chaos. This was organized, disciplined, purposeful. Veterans who'd conducted convoy operations in war zones applied those same skills to parking 750 motorcycles in formation around a single building. They lined every street within 2 blocks. They filled the park across the street, bikes standing in neat rows like steel soldiers at attention. They occupied every legal parking space, every section of public sidewalk. And then the riders dismounted and stood beside their machines, arms crossed, faces serious, creating a wall of leather and muscle and unspoken threat. Inside Sunset Meadows, the morning shift had arrived to find their workplace under siege. The receptionist, a young woman named Tracy who'd worked there for 3 years, stood at the window staring out at the sea of motorcycles with tears running down her face. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Oh my God, what did we do?" Laura Hastings arrived at 7:15 a.m., pushing through a crowd of reporters who shouted questions she refused to answer. She stormed into the building, her face pale with fury and fear. Staff members clustered in the break room, whispering, panicking. "What are we supposed to do? They're surrounding us. Are we safe? Should we leave?" "I didn't do anything. I'm not like Bridget and Kyle. I actually care about the residents." Laura tried to project authority she clearly didn't feel. "Everyone remain calm. They cannot legally prevent us from operating. We have residents who need care. Continue your duties and ignore what's happening outside." But ignoring 750 motorcycles was like ignoring a hurricane. The sound penetrated every wall, every window. The vibration ran through the floor. And every time a staff member looked outside, they saw the bikers watching, waiting, silent as judges. In his room on the second floor, Dutch Henderson sat in his wheelchair by the window, staring out at the gathering below. His mind, which had been foggy and confused for days, suddenly sharpened with startling clarity. He knew these people, not personally, not most of them, but he knew them in the way that veterans recognize each other across decades and conflicts. He saw the patches, the flags, the bearing. He saw men and women who'd walked the same roads he had, different wars, but the same mud and blood and terror. He saw the way they stood at attention without being called to it, the way they moved with purpose and discipline. His eyes filled with tears. They'd come for him. These warriors had come for an old man they didn't know because he was one of them, because that's what warriors did. A knock on his door pulled his shady attention away. Emma entered looking exhausted but determined, and with her came a man Dutch recognized, the big bearded biker from that reunion years ago, the one with the prosthetic leg and the eyes that understood things most people never would. "Dutch Henderson," Marcus said, extending his hand. "Not sure if you remember me. We met 5 years back at the California reunion. You told me about Normandy, and I told you about the A Shau Valley." Dutch's weathered face broke into a smile. "Ironside. You stepped on a mine pulling a Marine out. You remember." Marcus's voice was thick with emotion. "Sir, I've got 750 brothers and sisters downstairs who'd like to meet you. Would you be up for that?" Dutch looked at Emma, confusion flickering across his face. "Why? Why would they come here?" Emma knelt beside his wheelchair, taking his hands. "Because of what happened to you, Grandpa. Because I showed the world how they've been treating you, and because veterans take care of their own." Marcus helped wheel Dutch to the window. Below, as if sensing his presence, several bikers looked up. One raised his hand in salute, then another, then 10, 20, 50. Within seconds, 750 bikers were standing at attention, right hands raised to their foreheads, holding perfect salutes for the elderly man in the window. Dutch's shoulders shook with sobs. His trembling hand rose slowly, returning the salute with all the dignity and precision of a 19-year-old soldier standing on a beach in France 79 years ago. Outside, Emma met with Marcus and the Council of Chapter Presidents in the park across from the facility. They'd set up a command center of sorts, folding tables with laptops and documents, coolers with water and coffee, first aid supplies in case anyone needed them. Christina Hawk Morales showed Emma a tablet displaying real-time social media feeds. The hashtag Justice for Dutch has been used over 4 million times in the past 12 hours. We're trending worldwide. People in Germany, France, the UK are sharing your video and expressing outrage. The pressure on Sunset Meadows is immense, added James Preacher Williams from Nevada. Their corporate parent company's stock dropped 11% yesterday. They're getting review bombed online. Every veterans organization in America has issued statements condemning them. A woman Emma hadn't met approached, introducing herself as Rachel Martinez. I'm a Gold Star mom. Lost my daughter in Afghanistan in 2011. She was a medic. Rachel's voice was steady, but her eyes were fierce. Before she deployed, she volunteered at a VA nursing home. She used to say the greatest honor was caring for the generation that paved the way for hers. What happened to your grandfather is a betrayal of everything my daughter believed in. Emma listened as other bikers shared their stories. A man whose father had died of neglect in a nursing home, covered in bed sores that infection specialists said were criminal. A woman whose uncle, a Korean War vet, had been financially exploited by facility staff who stole his pension checks. A younger veteran whose grandmother had been left in soiled clothes for hours because staff couldn't be bothered. The stories poured out, a litany of systemic failures and casual cruelties inflicted on people who'd given everything to their country. Emma realized this wasn't just about her grandfather anymore. This was about thousands of elderly veterans suffering in silence because no one was watching. We need to make this count, Marcus said, calling the group to attention. We've got media coverage, we've got public support, we've got political attention. Now we need results. Legal pressure, regulatory action, criminal charges. Nothing less than complete accountability. David Chen, the lawyer who'd volunteered to represent Emma, arrived with a briefcase full of documents. I've filed formal complaints with the California Department of Social Services, the Department of Public Health, and the Office of the Attorney General. I've also submitted the video evidence to the Riverside District Attorney with a request for criminal investigation into elder abuse, assault, and conspiracy to commit fraud. How long until something happens? Emma asked. It's already happening. David smiled grimly. State health inspectors are required to investigate credible abuse allegations within 24 hours. Given the public attention, they'll likely show up today. Unannounced inspections are when they find the real violations because staff can't prepare. As if summoned by prophecy, 3 unmarked sedans pulled up to Sunset Meadows at 9:45 a.m. 6 people emerged carrying clipboards and state identification badges. The inspection team had arrived. Inside the facility, chaos erupted. Laura Hastings scrambled to put on a professional face, but there was no hiding from surprise inspections. The inspectors spread throughout the building, checking medication logs, examining residents, reviewing documentation, interviewing staff members who couldn't get their stories straight under pressure. They found violations immediately, medication errors in 8 different resident files, inadequate staffing records showing the facility was consistently operating below required nurse-to-patient ratios, broken safety equipment that should have been replaced months ago, food service violations in the kitchen, missing documentation for required safety drills. But the worst discoveries came from talking to residents and their families. Emboldened by the presence of inspectors and the army of bikers outside, people began speaking up. An 87-year-old woman reported being yelled at by staff when she needed bathroom assistance. A 92-year-old man showed bruises on his legs consistent with rough handling during transfers. Family members produced photographs of their loved ones in dirty clothes, in rooms that hadn't been cleaned, with call buttons deliberately placed out of reach. One elderly woman, a veteran herself, Army nurse from Vietnam, told inspectors through tears that staff had mocked her when she cried for her late husband. They said I was being dramatic, that I needed to get over it. He's been gone 2 years and I'm still allowed to miss him. I served my country for 23 years, and this is how they treat me. The inspection team's faces grew grimmer with each revelation. The lead inspector, a woman named Patricia Gomez with 30 years of experience, had seen neglectful facilities before. But the combination of systematic abuse, administrative cover-up, and targeting of vulnerable veterans put Sunset Meadows in a category of its own. By noon, the inspectors emerged and walked directly to where Marcus and the Leadership Council were gathered. Patricia approached with her clipboard held like a weapon. "Mr. Steele, I'm Patricia Gomez, Lead Inspector for California Department of Public Health. I wanted to let you know we're recommending immediate action against this facility's license. What we found in the past 2 hours constitutes gross negligence and endangered welfare. I can't give details due to privacy laws, but I can tell you this protest is justified." Marcus nodded slowly. "Will they be shut down?" "That's above my pay grade, but I'm recommending emergency suspension of their license pending a full investigation. That means no new admissions and a mandate to safely transfer current residents to other facilities within 30 days. A cheer went up from the gathered bikers, not a wild celebration, but a sound of grim satisfaction. Justice beginning to be served. Emma felt her knees go weak. David Chen caught her elbow, steadying her. "This is just the beginning," he said quietly, "but it's a damn good beginning." Throughout the afternoon, more families arrived, not protesters but families of other residents, coming to check on their loved ones, many for the first time in weeks. The sight of 750 bikers standing guard had sent a message. It was safe to speak up now. Someone was watching. The stories that emerged were heartbreaking. A daughter discovered her mother hadn't been bathed in 5 days despite paying for full care. A son found his father's diabetes medication had been administered incorrectly for 2 weeks, causing dangerous blood sugar swings. A granddaughter learned her grandmother, a retired teacher, had been calling for help for months, but staff dismissed her as demented when actually she was perfectly lucid and accurately reporting neglect. Marcus watched it all unfold from his position in the park, standing beside his motorcycle like a general surveying a battlefield. Except this battlefield was won not with violence, but with presence, with witness, with 750 people saying loudly and clearly, "We see you. We're watching, and we will not look away." As the sun began its descent toward evening, Dutch was wheeled outside one more time. The bikers formed an honor corridor, 2 lines leading from the facility entrance to where Marcus stood. Dutch rolled between them slowly, Emma pushing his wheelchair, and every single biker saluted as he passed. At the end of the corridor, a ceremony Marcus had quietly arranged was waiting. A folded American flag provided by a local VFW post, a certificate of appreciation signed by every chapter president present, and a new leather vest sized for a frail 90-year-old man with a single patch on the back, Rolling Thunder honorary member. Marcus helped Dutch into the vest. It hung loose on his thin frame, but when he looked down at the patch, his eyes filled with pride. "Thank you," Dutch whispered, his voice barely audible. "All of you, thank you." "Sir, we're the ones who should be thanking you," Marcus said. "You stormed a beach so we could live free. This is the least we can do." As darkness fell over Riverside, the bikers didn't leave. They'd come for a day, but they were staying for as long as it took. Tents appeared in the park, sleeping bags, camp chairs, coolers restocked by local supporters who'd been bringing food all day. The vigil was just beginning. Inside Sunset Meadows, Laura Hastings sat in her office staring at a formal notice from the state. License suspended pending investigation, mandatory transfer of all residents, potential criminal charges. Her career was over, her facility destroyed. Outside, 750 engines sat silent now, but their presence spoke louder than any roar. They'd come when called. They'd stood for justice. And they weren't going anywhere until Dutch Henderson was safe and every person responsible for his suffering faced consequences. The gathering had become a siege. And this time, the good guys were winning. The siege entered its second day with the rising sun. Most of the 750 bikers had stayed through the night, sleeping in tents or on bedrolls spread across the park, keeping watch in rotating shifts. At 6:30 a.m., as the morning shift arrived at Sunset Meadows, they walked past a gauntlet of silent veterans, drinking coffee and watching every face that entered the building. Laura Hastings had not slept. She'd spent the night in her office, doors locked, fielding calls from the corporate headquarters who were screaming about liability and stock prices and public relations disasters. Her attorney had been blunt. The facility was finished, her career was over, and she should be worried about criminal charges. At 7:45 a.m., she made a decision. She was leaving. She packed her personal items into a cardboard box, disabled the security cameras in the administrative wing with a few keystrokes she thought were clever, and headed for the back exit. The one that opened into a service alley where the garbage trucks made deliveries. The one she assumed the protesters hadn't thought about. She pushed the door open and stepped into the alley, then froze. 12 motorcycles were parked in a precise line blocking the alley exit. Beside them stood 20 bikers, arms crossed, standing on the public easement that bordered the facility's property line. They weren't on Sunset Meadows property. They weren't blocking the door. They were simply present, watching, waiting. A woman with silver hair and Gulf War patches on her vest stepped forward. Christina Hawk Morales smiled, but it was the smile of a predator. "Going somewhere, Ms. Hastings?" "This is harassment. I'm calling the police." "Please do," Christina said calmly. "We're on public property. We're not threatening you or preventing you from leaving. We're just observing. Though I'd think twice about running away when state investigators are arriving in about 30 minutes to interview you under oath." Laura's hands tightened on her box. "You people have destroyed my life's work. This facility has served the community for 18 years. "Your facility tortured a 90-year-old veteran," said a male biker stepping forward. He was maybe 40, with Afghanistan patches and burn scars visible on his neck. "You knew about it, you covered it up, and you threatened his granddaughter for exposing it. You don't get to play the victim here." Laura tried to push past them, but the wall of bikers shifted slightly, not blocking her but making clear she'd have to physically touch them to get through. They were masterfully towing the line of legal presence and psychological pressure. "Fine," she spat. "I'll go out the front." "Front's covered too," Christina called after her. "So are the side exits. We've been doing convoy security in war zones for decades. You think we can't secure a building?" Laura retreated back inside, her face flushed with rage and humiliation. As the door closed behind her, the bikers exchanged satisfied nods. She wasn't going anywhere. By 9 a.m., the media presence had doubled. National networks had sent their senior correspondents. International outlets were broadcasting live. The park across from Sunset Meadows had been transformed into a makeshift press center with cable runs, satellite uplinks, and correspondent positions marked with tape on the ground. Marcus had coordinated with Emma and David Chen to organize a formal press conference. A podium was set up on the park lawn, microphones clustered like metallic flowers. Behind the podium, someone had erected a large screen, the kind used for outdoor movie nights, connected to a laptop and projector. At 10 a.m., Emma stepped up to the podium. She wore simple clothes, jeans, and a sweater, no makeup to hide the exhaustion on her face. Behind her stood Marcus and the chapter presidents, a wall of leather and patches and American flags. To her sides, cameras from dozens of outlets captured every word. Emma pulled out a piece of paper, with notes, but then folded it and put it away. This needed to come from her heart. "My name is Emma Henderson. 3 days ago, I discovered my grandfather was being abused in the facility behind me. Robert Dutch Henderson is 90 years old. On June 6, 1944, when he was 19 years old, he landed on Omaha Beach in the fifth wave. He watched friends die before they reached the sand. He fought through France and Germany. He liberated a concentration camp. He earned the Purple Heart after taking shrapnel while pulling wounded men to safety." Her voice strengthened, anger burning through the exhaustion. "He came home and built a life. He worked as a carpenter for 47 years. He raised a family. He volunteered at his church. He taught me how to build a birdhouse and how to treat people with kindness. And in his final years, when he needed care, I trusted Sunset Meadows to treat him with the dignity he deserved." Emma paused, her jaw tightening. Instead, they abused him, they mocked him, they withheld his medication, they hurt him deliberately and laughed about it. And when I reported it, they threatened to sue me and tried to silence me. She gestured to the screen behind her. "I'm going to show you what I found. Some of this footage is difficult to watch, but I want the world to see what happened to my grandfather and what's happening to vulnerable elderly people in facilities across this country." The screen lit up with edited clips from Emma's hidden camera footage. Even though the video had already gone viral, seeing it on a 12-foot screen with audio pumped through professional speakers hit differently. The crowd of reporters and bikers watched in heavy silence as Bridget's voice echoed across the park. "You're not so tough now, are you? You're just a pathetic old man." When the footage showed Dutch's medication being thrown away, several bikers turned away, unable to watch. When it showed Kyle squeezing Dutch's wrist hard enough to leave bruises, a ripple of anger ran through the crowd. The video ended. Emma's voice was raw when she continued, "This is what institutional abuse looks like. This is what happens when profit matters more than people, when staff aren't properly trained or supervised, when administrators care more about protecting their reputation than protecting residents. My grandfather isn't alone. There are thousands of elderly veterans suffering in silence because they're afraid, because they're confused, because no one is watching." She looked directly into the cameras. "But people are watching now. These 750 bikers behind me are watching. America is watching. And we're not going to look away until there's justice and accountability." The gathered media erupted with questions, but Emma stepped back from the podium. Marcus took her place, his commanding presence silencing the noise. Rolling Thunder Motorcycle Club has one mission: protect and honor veterans. What happened to Dutch Henderson is an attack on every person who's ever worn a uniform. We're here to make clear that America's veterans are not alone, not forgotten, and not unprotected. We'll stay here as long as necessary to ensure Dutch's safety and to see that everyone responsible faces consequences." As if on cue, police cars began arriving. Not one or two, but 6 vehicles, including an unmarked sedan. Officers emerged, followed by 2 detectives and the district attorney herself, Karen Reeves, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, known for her aggressive prosecution of elder abuse cases. The assembled bikers and media watched as the law enforcement officials entered Sunset Meadows. Inside, staff members were gathered in the break room, having been told not to leave the building. Laura Hastings sat in her office flanked by her lawyer, both looking like defendants awaiting sentencing. Detective Sarah Kim entered the break room with a list of names. "Bridget Santos, Kyle Brennan. I need you both to come with me." Bridget's face went white. Kyle stood slowly, his earlier bravado completely gone. Both had been in hiding since being identified online, but when the district attorney's office called that morning demanding their presence for questioning, their attorneys had advised cooperation. "Am I under arrest?" Bridget asked, her voice shaking. "Not yet," Detective Kim said, "but you're both being detained for questioning regarding elder abuse, assault, and conspiracy charges. You have the right to remain silent." As she read them their Miranda rights, other officers moved through the building collecting evidence, boxing up medication logs, photographing Dutch's room, interviewing staff members who were suddenly very eager to distance themselves from Bridget and Kyle. Outside, the media captured the moment when Bridget and Kyle were escorted out in handcuffs. Not under arrest technically, but detained for questioning, which meant cameras caught them being led to squad cars with their heads down, lawyers beside them, looking every bit like criminals being hauled away. The crowd of bikers remained silent, but the energy was electric. This was what they'd come for. Accountability. Emma watched from beside Marcus, her hands trembling. "Is this real? Is this actually happening?" "It's happening," David Chen said, appearing at her elbow with a satisfied smile. "The DA wouldn't move this fast if she didn't have a solid case. Between your video, the state inspection findings, and the additional witness testimony they collected yesterday, they've got more than enough for charges." At 11:30 a.m., Karen Reeves emerged from the facility and walked directly to the media scrum. She didn't look happy exactly, but she looked determined. "The Riverside County District Attorney's Office is announcing that we will be filing criminal charges against 3 individuals in connection with the systematic abuse of elderly residents at Sunset Meadows Nursing Home. Bridget Santos and Kyle Brennan are being charged with multiple counts of elder abuse and assault. Laura Hastings is being charged with conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and willful failure to report mandatory abuse allegations." The media exploded with questions. Reeves raised her hand for silence. Additionally, we're launching a broader investigation into Sunset Meadows' parent company and their oversight practices. The evidence suggests this wasn't isolated to one facility. We'll be examining all their locations across California. She looked directly at the cameras. Elder abuse is a crime we take seriously in this county. When the victims are veterans who served our country, it's especially egregious. I want to thank Emma Henderson for her courage in exposing this situation and Rolling Thunder for ensuring the world was watching when justice needed to be served. The bikers erupted in applause and cheers, engines revving in triumph. Marcus raised his fist, and 750 bikers raised theirs in return. But the moment that would be replayed on news broadcasts worldwide came at noon, when staff members wheeled Dutch outside one final time. The army of media and bikers parted, creating a clear path, and Dutch's wheelchair rolled slowly into the center of the gathering. He looked overwhelmed, his eyes wide, his hands shaking more than usual. Emma knelt beside him, taking his hand. "Grandpa, these people are here for you. Do you understand? They came because you matter, because you're a hero." Dutch's eyes swept across the sea of motorcycles and leather vests and American flags. His gaze landed on patches he recognized, units he knew, wars he'd heard about. These were his people, separated by decades, but united by something deeper than time. Marcus approached slowly, mindful of not overwhelming the elderly man. "Mr. Henderson, on behalf of Rolling Thunder and every veteran organization in America, we want to present you with something." He held out a wooden plaque, beautifully crafted with Dutch's name engraved along with his service dates and the medals he had earned. Below that, a quote, "A hero is someone who has given his or her life to something bigger than oneself." Dutch's weathered fingers traced the engraving. Then he looked up at Marcus, and his eyes were perfectly clear, sharper than they'd been in months. "I wasn't a hero," he said, his voice carrying in the sudden silence. "The heroes didn't come home. I just did what needed doing." Marcus's eyes filled with tears. "Sir, that's exactly what makes you a hero, and now we're doing what needs doing for you." He stepped back and raised his hand to his forehead in a crisp salute. Instantly, 750 bikers snapped to attention and saluted in perfect unison. The image was stunning, overwhelming, an army of warriors honoring the warrior who'd paved their way. Dutch's trembling hand rose slowly, returning the salute with all the dignity and precision he'd learned 80 years ago. He held it for a long moment, his eyes moving across the faces before him, seeing not strangers but brothers and sisters in arms. Then something remarkable happened. Dutch began to speak, his voice growing stronger as memory returned with crystalline clarity. "I see the 1st Cavalry patch there," he said, pointing to a biker's vest. "I served alongside 1st Cav in Germany. Good soldiers, brave men." His finger moved to another patch. "And that's the big red one. 1st Infantry Division. You follow a proud tradition." He continued identifying patches, units, divisions, sharing brief memories that connected his war to theirs, his service to theirs, his sacrifice to theirs. The bikers listened with reverence, many crying openly as this 90-year-old veteran bridged generations with his words. A young Marine, back from his 3rd deployment to Afghanistan, stepped forward hesitantly. "Sir, did you ever get scared? In combat?" Dutch looked at him with understanding that spanned 79 years. "Every single day, son. Fear doesn't make you weak. What you do despite that fear is what counts. You did good over there. Don't let anyone tell you different." The young Marine's face crumpled and he saluted through his tears. At 1 p.m., state officials arrived in force. The Secretary of the California Health and Human Services Agency, accompanied by legal counsel and investigators, held an impromptu press conference on the facility's front steps. Effective immediately, Sunset Meadows Nursing Home's license is suspended. All residents will be transferred to approved facilities within 72 hours. The facility's parent company is being fined $800,000, with additional penalties pending investigation outcomes. Criminal charges are being filed and civil litigation will follow. More cheers from the assembled crowd. Emma found herself swept up in hugs from bikers she'd never met, all of them crying and celebrating and promising to help transfer her grandfather to the best facility they could find. The ripple effects were already spreading across the nation. By mid-afternoon, news outlets were reporting that Emma's video and the Rolling Thunder response had sparked protests at substandard facilities in 17 states. Families who'd been silent were suddenly speaking up, empowered by what they'd seen in Riverside. Politicians who'd ignored elder care reform for years were suddenly calling press conferences announcing new legislation. Senator Mitchell Warren from California announced on the steps of the state capitol that she was introducing the Dutch-Henderson Act, which would mandate unannounced inspections of all elder care facilities, establish a veterans advocate position in every facility housing veterans, and increase criminal penalties for elder abuse. Congress members from both parties began drafting federal legislation to tie Medicare funding to elder care standards and establish a national database of facilities with abuse violations. The national conversation had shifted. Elder abuse, particularly of veterans, was suddenly front-page news across America. As the sun began to set on the second day, Dutch was transferred to a highly rated VA facility 40 minutes away, but not in an ambulance or a van. Marcus and the Rolling Thunder leadership had arranged something special. A custom motorcycle sidecar, built specifically for elderly or disabled passengers, was attached to Marcus's bike. Dutch was settled into it carefully, warm blankets tucked around him, a helmet placed gently on his head. And then, with Emma riding on a bike behind them and 750 motorcycles forming an honor escort, Dutch Henderson took his freedom ride. They rode slowly through Riverside as the sun painted the sky in shades of amber and crimson. People lined the streets, having heard about the procession. They waved flags, held signs reading, "Thank you, Dutch," and "Heroes Never Forgotten," and saluted as the convoy passed. Dutch's face, visible through the sidecar's clear windscreen, was transformed. The fear and confusion that had haunted his eyes for months was gone, replaced by something that looked like peace, maybe even joy. He was surrounded by warriors riding toward safety, honored and protected and seen. When they arrived at the new facility, the director was waiting personally to greet Dutch. She'd been thoroughly vetted by Rolling Thunder members, warned that 750 bikers would be checking in regularly, and made absolutely clear that this veteran was under protection. She shook Dutch's hand with genuine warmth. "Mr. Henderson, it's an honor to care for you. We'll treat you the way you deserve to be treated." Behind her, Marcus and the entire Rolling Thunder leadership stood in silent promise. "We'll be watching." As darkness fell and the bikers finally began dispersing to return to their homes across 12 states, Emma stood with Dutch in his new room. It was clean, comfortable, with a window overlooking a garden. His belongings, carefully packed by volunteers, were already unpacked and arranged. "We did it, Grandpa," Emma whispered, squeezing his hand. "You're safe now." Dutch looked at her with those sharp blue eyes, clarity still holding. "Emmy girl, you saved my life. You and all those warriors out there. I'm not sure what I did to deserve it. You served, Grandpa. You sacrificed. And when you needed help, your brothers and sisters in arms showed up. That's what warriors do." Outside, engines fired up one last time. The roar echoed through the night as 750 bikers rode away, their mission accomplished, but their watch never ending. Justice had been served. Accountability had been delivered. And one 90-year-old veteran had been reminded that heroes are never forgotten, not while warriors still ride. The transformation in Dutch Henderson over the following weeks was nothing short miraculous. At Golden Valley Veterans Home, the highly rated VA facility that became his new residence, Dutch received the care he should have been getting all along. Medications administered on time by attentive nurses, physical therapy to maintain his mobility and strength, cognitive engagement through activities designed for someone with his sharp mind, not treatments meant for advanced dementia patients. Most importantly, he received respect, dignity, and genuine kindness from staff who understood that caring for veterans was a privilege, not a burden. Within 2 weeks, the fog that had clouded Dutch's mind for months lifted substantially. The confusion that Emma had attributed to inevitable decline turned out to be largely the result of improper medication management, dehydration, and the psychological trauma of ongoing abuse. With proper care, Dutch's personality re-emerged. He told jokes with other residents. He participated in the facility's veteran story-sharing program. He even started a woodworking class, teaching younger vets with PTSD how to build birdhouses, the same way he'd taught Emma decades ago. But the most significant change was the constant presence of Rolling Thunder members. Marcus had made good on his promise that Dutch would never be alone or unprotected again. Within a week of Dutch's transfer, Rolling Thunder established the Veterans Watch Program, a formalized volunteer initiative that would change elder care oversight across America. The program was elegantly simple but remarkably effective. Trained volunteers, primarily veterans themselves, would make regular unannounced visits to care facilities housing elderly veterans. They'd spend time with residents, observe staff interactions, document any concerns, and maintain detailed logs. The volunteers wore identifying badges and operated with complete transparency, coordinating with facility administrators who understood that refusing access would result in immediate public scrutiny. At Golden Valley, Dutch could count on seeing familiar leather vests at least 4 times per week. Sometimes it was Marcus, rolling in on his bike to play chess with Dutch in the garden. Sometimes it was Christina Hawk Morales, who brought her tablet and showed Dutch photos from Rolling Thunder events across the country. Sometimes it was younger veterans who needed Dutch's wisdom as much as he appreciated their company. The director of Golden Valley, Margaret Chen, had been skeptical at first. She ran a quality facility and didn't appreciate the implication that she needed monitoring. But after meeting Marcus and understanding the program's true purpose, her resistance melted into appreciation. "They're not here because we're bad," she told her staff during a meeting. "They're here because what happened at Sunset Meadows can happen anywhere when people stop paying attention. Their presence keeps us accountable and reminds us every day why this work matters." The legal consequences for those responsible for Dutch's abuse unfolded with satisfying swiftness. The criminal justice system, motivated by massive public attention and a district attorney who made elder abuse prosecutions her signature issue, moved faster than anyone expected. Kyle Brennan, the tattooed orderly who'd mocked Dutch and deliberately caused him pain, took a plea deal 4 months after his arrest. Faced with video evidence and testimony from other staff members who'd witnessed his abuse, his attorney advised him that going to trial would result in far harsher sentencing. He pled guilty to 3 counts of elder abuse and 2 counts of assault. The judge sentenced him to 4 years in state prison and permanent prohibition from working in any healthcare capacity. At his sentencing, the judge's words were scathing. "Mr. Brennan, you were entrusted with the care of vulnerable elderly people, including veterans who served this nation with honor. Instead of providing care, you inflicted cruelty. Instead of showing compassion, you demonstrated sadism. This court has no sympathy for you." Bridget Santos went to trial, her attorney arguing that she'd been overworked and undertrained, that her actions reflected systemic failures rather than individual malice. The jury deliberated for less than 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on 5 counts of elder abuse, 2 counts of assault, and 1 count of medication tampering. She received 6 years in prison and a $50,000 fine. Several jurors later told reporters that Emma's video had left no doubt about Bridget's intentional cruelty. Laura Hastings faced the most complex charges: conspiracy to obstruct justice, failure to report mandatory abuse, and fraudulent documentation. Her trial became a showcase of institutional failure. Prosecutors presented evidence that Laura had received at least 8 separate complaints about staff mistreatment over 18 months and had systematically buried them, intimidated complainants, and falsified inspection reports. The defense argued that Laura was a scapegoat for corporate policies that prioritized profit over care, that she'd been following directives from Sunset Meadows' parent company to minimize costs by understaffing and to suppress complaints to protect the company's reputation. The argument had merit, but it didn't absolve her of personal responsibility. The jury convicted her on all counts. She received 3 years in prison, lost her nursing home administrator license permanently, and was ordered to pay restitution totaling $220,000 to victims and their families. The parent company faced separate civil litigation that would eventually result in a $17 million settlement distributed among 43 families. Sunset Meadows itself never reopened. After the license suspension, state investigators conducted a comprehensive audit and found violations so extensive that restoration was deemed impossible. The building sat empty for 2 months, a monument to institutional failure, until an unexpected buyer emerged. The Veterans Coalition of Southern California, a nonprofit organization that operated several highly rated care facilities, purchased the building for $3.2 million. They announced plans to completely renovate it and reopen it as Heritage House, a state-of-the-art facility specifically designed for elderly veterans with enhanced oversight protocols, veteran volunteer integration, and a founding commitment that abuse would never happen again. Marcus attended the ribbon-cutting ceremony 9 months after Dutch's rescue. Standing before media cameras and a crowd of supporters, he spoke about transformation and redemption. This building represented the worst of what can happen when we forget our responsibilities to our elders and our veterans. Now, it will represent the best of what's possible when communities come together to protect those who protected us. Heritage House will set the standard for veteran care nationwide. The Veterans Watch program expanded far beyond anyone's initial expectations. What started as informal volunteers checking on Dutch became a structured nationwide initiative. Within 6 months, Rolling Thunder had established Watch program chapters in 40 states, training over 3,000 volunteers in proper observation protocols, documentation standards, and veteran advocacy. The program's success attracted attention from major veteran organizations. The American Legion, Veterans of Foreign Wars, and Disabled American Veterans all partnered with Rolling Thunder to expand the initiative. State governments began officially recognizing Watch program volunteers, granting them legal access rights to facilities and incorporating their reports into inspection protocols. Statistics told the story of impact. In facilities where Watch program volunteers maintained regular presence, documented abuse complaints decreased by 67%, not because abuse wasn't being reported, but because staff behavior improved dramatically when they knew they were being observed. Patient satisfaction scores increased by 42%. Family complaints about neglect dropped by 59%. Staff turnover decreased as facilities that embraced the program attracted employees who genuinely wanted to provide quality care. Most significantly, criminal prosecutions for elder abuse in care facilities increased by 312% in the year following Dutch's story going viral. Emma's video and the Rolling Thunder response had shattered the silence that allowed abuse to flourish in shadows. Emma herself had become an unexpected leader in the movement. She'd taken a sabbatical from teaching to work full-time as the Veterans Watch program's national coordinator, a position that allowed her to channel her trauma and rage into systemic change. She traveled to chapters across the country, training new volunteers, meeting with legislators, and sharing Dutch's story wherever people needed to understand why this work mattered. She'd also become close with the Rolling Thunder family. At first, she'd been intimidated by the leather and motorcycles and road names, but she quickly discovered that these supposed tough bikers were some of the most compassionate, principled people she'd ever met. They'd adopted her as one of their own, and she'd started riding herself, taking motorcycle lessons from Christina and earning her own vest with an honorary patch. The 6-month anniversary of Dutch's rescue fell on a crisp Saturday in November. Marcus had been planning for weeks, coordinating with chapters, sending invitations, arranging logistics for something special. Dutch's 90th birthday was approaching, and Rolling Thunder intended to celebrate the man who'd become their symbol, their mission, their reminder of why they rode. At 10 a.m., motorcycles began arriving at Golden Valley Veterans Home. Not 750 this time, but even more. 843 riders from 19 states, some traveling over 1,000 miles to be present. They filled the facility's parking lot, lined the surrounding streets, and transformed the peaceful suburban setting into a thunderous celebration of life and service. Dutch, who'd been told about the party but not its full scale, sat in his wheelchair in the facility's garden, surrounded by Emma and several of his new friends from Golden Valley. When the first wave of motorcycles rolled into view, his eyes widened with delighted shock. "Emmy girl, what did you do?" "It wasn't me, Grandpa. This is all them. They love you." The riders dismounted and formed a procession line, each one approaching Dutch personally to shake his hand, thank him for his service, and wish him happy birthday. It took over an hour for all 843 to greet him individually, but Dutch insisted on meeting every single one, his handshake surprisingly strong, his eyes bright with joy. A stage had been erected in the garden, decorated with American flags and banners reading "Happy 90th Birthday Dutch" and "Heroes Live Forever." At noon, Marcus took the microphone. 6 months ago, the world watched as 750 bikers showed up to protect one of our own. Today, we're here to celebrate that this mission succeeded. Dutch Henderson is thriving, safe, and surrounded by people who understand his value. But more than that, his story sparked a movement that's protecting thousands of elderly veterans across America. Marcus gestured to Emma, who joined him on stage. This young woman had the courage to expose an injustice when it would have been easier to stay silent. Because of her, abusers are in prison, a broken facility is being transformed, and families across the country are speaking up for their loved ones. "Emma, on behalf of Rolling Thunder, we want to present you with this." He handed her a leather vest identical to the one they'd given Dutch, with "Rolling Thunder, honorary member," embroidered on the back, along with a new patch, "Defender of Heroes." Emma's eyes filled with tears as she slipped it on. The crowd of bikers erupted in applause and engine revs that rattled windows throughout the facility. Then it was Dutch's turn to speak. Staff members helped him onto the stage, steadying him as he stood at the microphone. He looked out at the sea of leather and chrome, at the flags and patches and faces, both weathered and young. When he spoke, his voice was strong, clearer than it had been in years. "I've been thinking a lot lately about what it means to be a hero. When I was 19, storming that beach in France, I didn't feel like a hero. I felt terrified. The men who died that day, they were the heroes. I was just a boy trying to survive and do my duty." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "I lived 70 more years after that day, built a life, raised a family, tried to be a good man. And then I got old and sick and vulnerable. And in that vulnerability, I discovered that evil doesn't just exist on battlefields. Sometimes it wears scrubs and smiles and pretends to care while it hurts people who can't defend themselves." His voice hardened slightly. "I thought I was going to die in that place, not from old age or sickness, but from cruelty, from people who saw me as a burden instead of a human being. I'd survived war only to be defeated by neglect." Dutch's eyes found Emma in the front row. "But my granddaughter refused to accept that. She fought for me when I couldn't fight for myself. And then, all of you, warriors from different wars and different generations, you fought for me too. You showed up with such force and purpose that the whole world had to pay attention." His voice cracked with emotion. "You saved my life, not just by getting me out of that place, but by reminding me that I still mattered, that my service meant something, that I wasn't alone or forgotten. You gave me back my dignity and my will to live." He straightened as much as his aged body allowed and saluted. "So I want to say thank you to every single one of you. You're the real heroes. You stormed no beach, but you fought a different kind of battle. And you won." The garden erupted. 843 bikers stood and saluted in unison, many crying openly, all profoundly moved by the old warrior's words. The celebration continued for hours. Cake was served, enough to feed a small army. Stories were shared. A slideshow played on large screens showing the past 6 months. Dutch's recovery, watch program volunteers at facilities across America, families reunited with loved ones who'd been transferred to better care, the ribbon cutting at Heritage House. Local news covered the event, but this time the tone was celebratory rather than investigative. "This, something that will outlast both of us." Emma squeezed his hand. "I promise, Grandpa. As long as I'm breathing, the watch program will continue. We'll protect them the way we should have protected you from the beginning." They sat in comfortable silence, watching autumn leaves drift across the garden. In the facility behind them, Other residents enjoyed their own visitors, volunteers from Rolling Thunder, and families who visited more frequently now, emboldened by the knowledge that someone was watching. Someone cared. Dutch closed his eyes, letting the afternoon sun warm his weathered face. He thought about beaches and battles, about boys who became men in instants of terror and courage. He thought about building houses and raising a family and growing old with dignity until dignity was stolen. He thought about rescue and redemption and the strange truth that sometimes the wars we fight at home matter just as much as the wars we fight abroad. The rumble of distant motorcycles reached his ears again, a sound that had become comfort rather than thunder, promise rather than threat. He opened his eyes and raised his hand in salute to the warriors he couldn't see but knew were there, riding their eternal watch, keeping their eternal promise. They'd saved his life by giving him back his dignity. They'd honored his service by refusing to let him suffer in silence. They'd transformed one old man's nightmare into a nationwide movement that would protect countless others. As the sun continued its descent and Emma helped him back inside for dinner, Dutch Henderson, 90 years old, D-Day survivor, Purple Heart recipient, father, grandfather, and symbol of something larger than himself, smiled. He'd survived the beaches of Normandy. He'd survived Sunset Meadows. And now, surrounded by family and brothers and sisters in arms, he was finally, truly home. The watch would continue. The promise would be kept. The vulnerable would be protected. Because sometimes it takes 750 motorcycles and one courageous granddaughter to remind America that those who protected us deserve protection in return, that dignity is not negotiable, and that heroes are never forgotten as long as warriors still ride.